Okay, so you guys know how everyone's always obsessed with Meghan Markle, right? Like every single thing she does is analyzed to death. Well, something happened during a live interview that I think reveals a lot about the pressure she's constantly under. And honestly, it's more than just celebrity gossip. It's about how we treat people in the public eye and the toll it takes. The interview seemed pretty normal at first. Meghan was sitting there looking composed, doing the whole polished celebrity thing. You know, the upright posture, the carefully chosen words, the practiced smiles. It was clearly a managed appearance designed to project a certain image, calm, in control, reclaiming the narrative. And for a while, it worked. She was hitting all the right notes, smiling at the right times, giving thoughtful but not too revealing answers. You could tell she'd rehearsed this, probably a million times. But even from the beginning, there were these tiny cracks in the facade, a pause that lingered a little too long before an answer, her eyes blinking rapidly, then going completely still, her jaw tightening just for a split second, her hands folded in her lap, pressed together so hard her knuckles were turning white. Most people probably didn't notice it right away. Live TV is good at masking tension as professionalism, but as the interview went on, the atmosphere started to subtly shift. The interviewer picked up on it too. They adjusted their tone, not in a confrontational way, but with this unnerving calm. It wasn't hostile, but it was intensely focused. Like they were intentionally trying to get under her skin in a way that wouldn't be noticed by the general public. Meghan's posture remained elegant, but her stillness grew heavier. She tilted her head slightly as she listened, her expression neutral yet alert, as if bracing for something she couldn't quite see coming. The rhythm of the interview slowed. Gone was the easy back and forth of a promotional conversation. In its place came something more deliberate, more probing, though still wrapped in courtesy. And the audience at home began to feel it too. It no longer felt like a platform for rehearsed messages or controlled storytelling. It felt like an examination, not aggressive, not cruel, but unmistakably a test. The kind where every word matters and every silence speaks louder than sound. Meghan answered again, but this time her voice carried a faint edge, barely noticeable yet impossible to ignore once heard. She inhaled before finishing her sentence as though steadying herself. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the host, then away, then back again. It was the look of someone maintaining composure while recalculating in real time. The host leaned back slightly, allowing space, letting the moment breathe. That choice, intentional or instinctive, only heightened the tension. With no interruption, no redirect, the weight of the exchange settled squarely on Meghan's shoulder. The studio felt quieter even though nothing had technically changed. The lights didn't dim, the cameras didn't stop, but the mood had shifted unmistakably. This was no longer about presenting a polished image. It was about endurance, about whether control could be maintained under pressure that wasn't loud or dramatic, but quietly relentless. Meghan's face remained composed, yet the micro-expressions told a deeper story, an internal effort to hold ground as the space around her narrowed. And then, without anyone fully realizing how it happened, the silence arrived again, longer this time, heavier, the kind that makes people uncomfortable because it suggests something unresolved is about to surface. No one moved to fill it, not the host, not Meghan, not the audience watching from their screens. It was in that silence, before any decisive moment, before any single question landed, that control truly began to slip. So, what was really unfolding in that tense, unsettling silence? And could it reveal truths no one expected? Okay, so the question that caused all this was actually pretty simple. I mean, on the surface, it was delivered so calmly, almost gently, which is what made it so brutal, honestly. The interviewer wasn't yelling or anything. They didn't even lean in all dramatically. They just kind of slipped the question in there like it belonged. Basically, they brought up the public's perception that Meghan's private life was a mess, chaotic, even. And then they asked how she reconciled that image with the whole in control thing she projects. But then they followed up with another question, and this is where it got really dicey. They asked about her marriage, about how she managed it under all that pressure. And then they straight up asked how she responded to the claims that she had shaped or even manipulated Prince Harry's decisions to protect her own narrative. I know, right? Wow, there weren't any accusations. Nothing was stated as fact, but the room just kind of lost its oxygen. The question didn't attack, it exposed. It exposed a gap between what she shows the world and what people actually think is going on. And that's a gap you can't just fill with some PR-approved answers. She had to actually address the contradictions which she's been avoiding for years, and you could see her process it. The silence was so long it was uncomfortable. Her lips parted, then closed. She took this really slow breath, but it caught in her throat. It was like her body reacted before her brain could catch up. The studio just froze. Her eyes started scanning the room, like she was looking for something to hold on to. She blinked. Her jaw tightened, her hands still folded, pressed together even harder. The interviewer just waited. They didn't interrupt, they didn't try to soften the blow, they just let the silence hang there, and the weight of the question just kept getting heavier. It wasn't about gossip anymore, it was about her identity, her agency, her accountability under all this insane public scrutiny. You could see her breathing change. It was shorter, shallower. Her posture was still upright, but it looked fragile, like it could break at any moment. She looked at the interviewer, then down, like she was deciding between being honest and protecting herself. The cameras just kept rolling, which felt so intrusive at that point. Every little expression was magnified. The crew was standing perfectly still, unsure if this was going to resolve itself or completely fall apart. And when she finally looked up again, there was no answer. Just this look that said she'd stopped calculating and started feeling. The question had done its job. It had stripped away the momentum and forced her into this space where silence was louder than anything she could say. And in that moment, it was clear that the interview was never going to recover. The line between control and collapse had already blurred. The thing is, to understand why that silence was so heavy, you have to look at everything that led up to it. This wasn't just about one interview, one question. It was the result of years of being under a microscope where every single thing she says is dissected and judged. From the second she stepped into the spotlight, she became a symbol. To some, she's independence and disruption. To others, she's controversy and control. Her voice is either powerful or calculated, depending on who you ask. There's no neutral ground. What people don't get is that emotional restraint, for someone like Meghan, isn't just some performance choice, it's survival. Every time she steps out in public, she has to walk this impossible tightrope. Show strength, but don't come off as cold. Be vulnerable, but don't look like you're trying to manipulate people. And every single word she says can have huge consequences. So, that question, the one that landed like a bomb, it didn't create the tension, it just exposed it. It forced her to deal with this massive gap between how she sees herself and how the world sees her. The idea that she's chaotic, or that she's secretly controlling Harry, those are narratives that have been floating around forever. And she's tried to ignore them or address them indirectly because anything else just makes it worse. But living with that kind of contradiction, it's exhausting. She's a real person with real feelings, but she's also this public figure who's supposed to represent something. She's barely allowed to just exist. Everything is evidence. Every decision is a statement. Over time, you just learn to hold all that tension inside. You lock it down behind this practiced calm. But it doesn't go away. It just builds up. So what happened on TV? It wasn't a breakdown, it was more like an exposure. That stillness, the controlled breathing that suddenly went haywire, the way her eyes were darting around, it was all those years of pressure just flooding out at once. It wasn't a weakness, it was endurance finally hitting its limit. And the real truth of the moment isn't in some rumor or accusation. It's in seeing what that constant scrutiny actually costs a person. That silence? It was filled with every time she'd chosen to hold back, to stay calm instead of react. It showed how much energy it takes to stay in control when everyone thinks they have the right to define who you are. By the time the camera was back on her face, we weren't just watching an interview. We were watching the result of years of strain finally becoming visible. The silence wasn't empty. It was packed with history, expectations, and all this unresolved tension. And that set the stage for what she was gonna have to do next. And honestly, the camera just wouldn't quit. Like, they just kept filming, which made the whole thing even more intense. What we saw wasn't some big meltdown or a dramatic confession, it was just stillness. Thick, unbroken stillness that you couldn't ignore. The interview started up again, but everything felt different. The audience was frozen. No one knew if they should clap or breathe or even move. It felt like they were going to break something. The interviewer didn't say anything either. No follow-up questions, no attempts to make it easier. That was on purpose. Everyone knew it. Saying something would have ruined the moment. The silence, as awful as it was, had become the whole point. Someone off camera, probably a producer, was freaking out, I'm sure. They were probably debating whether to cut away or keep filming. Cutting away would protect the show, but staying might show something real. Meghan leaned forward a little like she was finally going to answer. Her lips moved. She almost said something, but then she stopped. She closed her eyes for a second, not like she was giving up, but like she was trying to stay in control. You could see her thinking a million miles an hour. What can I say? What should I say? What can I never take back? Her composure had changed. The practiced ease was gone. Now it was just raw and unguarded. She took a breath. Slower this time, like she was trying to ground herself. When she opened her eyes again, they were shiny, not with tears, but with effort. Effort to be there. Effort to stay dignified while being emotionally exposed. The lights felt harsher, showing every little movement. Her hands loosened a little, not clenched anymore, but not steady either. Her shoulders dropped a tiny bit, just enough to show how tired she was. This was it. This was the collapse. Not loud, not dramatic, but human. The armor she'd been wearing for years had slipped, and underneath there wasn't chaos, there was vulnerability. The audience knew it instantly. It wasn't a time to react, it was a time to witness. The distance between celebrity and audience disappeared. She wasn't performing anymore, she was dealing with her own limits in real time. Honesty was on one side, self-protection was on the other, and in the middle was the knowledge that millions of people were watching.